Hi, my name is Robert Morgan, and we're talking about the history of the Coptic Church. We've reached the 11th century. At the start of this 11th century, we see the Pope on Egypt is Pope Zackarias, who began with the beginning of the 11th century at 1004, 1032. He's the 64th Pope of Alexandria, together with one of the most ruthless rulers that came onto Egypt. The sixth Fatimid ruler was, or Khalifa was, Al-Hakim bi-Amr, or the ruler by Allah's command, as is translated. He started his rule in 996 to 1021. He was actually one of the most extravagant, ruthless, known rulers in the history of the Coptic people. The problem with Al-Hakim that he was, at the beginning of his rule, it was acceptable. There was no persecution generally for the Christians of Egypt. His mother was of Byzantine origin. She was Christian, and his uncles were Christians. He actually ruled under the guise of advisors due to his age. When he came of age and his mother passed away, his attitude changed towards the Christians of Egypt. One of the worst persecutions to the Egyptians came along with his time. People were forced again into oppressive rules, like, for example, wearing the huge cross that caused damage to the neck bones, hence the word blue bone to the Coptic Egyptians. The Jews were forced to wear a huge star just to demarcate them from the Muslims. They're not allowed into public baths. The churches were destroyed, crosses were removed. The Christians were not allowed to hold the cross outside or even attend public demonstrations of weddings, or even to hold public demonstration to bury somebody from their family. Everything, their rights were curtailed. They were, of course, large amounts of money was embezzled from the church and from the Pope. Churches were run down. Many churches were destroyed and confiscated. They were the churches were forced to be changed into mosques. Public worshipping was outlawed. During the time of Al-Hakim bi-Amr, it was actually one of the worst periods in the history of the Coptic people in Egypt. Many oppressive rules were passed, and he made sure that they were implemented on the people. Many people forsake the religion, forsake their faith at the time. Largely, either they would lose their life, they would lose their livelihood, or they would become Muslim. This continued on for a very long time during the time of Al-Hakim bi-Amr. People were not allowed to, for example, to ride horses again, and they were forced to only ride donkeys. Sometimes not only donkeys, and they were not allowed to ride the donkeys in like facing forward. They had to look backwards. Stuff of the same manner that actually were very destructive to the Christian community in Egypt. Their numbers dwindled down to, it was said, to less than 5 million. Huge massacres occurred to the Egyptians, Copts. Continuing with the history of Egypt during the time of Al-Hakim bi-Amr at the start of the 11th century, and relating how oppressive his time was. Actually, Al-Hakim was very fickle in his beliefs. He went to the extremes from one side to the other. He was actually Shiite Muslims, he was not a Sunni Muslim, whereas the majority of Muslims in Egypt were Sunni Muslims. Sometimes he oppressed the Christians way more than he oppressed anybody else, and then at times he was fair to everybody, and then at times he oppressed the Muslims of Egypt contrary to his beliefs. There was accounts that he was not totally sane and that he came up with his own religion, and he wanted everybody to believe in him as actually a prophet. He had made books for people to sign that they believed in what he believed in. He came up with this new religion and law of differentiation and all that new heresy. Actually, from all the people in Egypt, there was only the Muslims that signed these books, and he found out that none of the Christians in Egypt signed these books. He was totally unhappy with them. And Maqrizi, the Arab historian, recounts how he tormented the Egyptian Copts at the time and how he took his anger out on the Egyptian Copts, destroying their churches, their lives, their livelihood. He confiscated lands, he confiscated money, he destroyed churches. He forbade them from celebrating Easter, Epiphany, everything that has to do with public worshipping. He stopped it, even to bury the dead. He did not allow it. This continued for a very long time until at one day he just came. This behavior stopped, and it was mentioned that he used to go to the mountain in Mu'attam, and he goes up the mountain to pray every day in the morning with two of his followers. And at one point he was they found the two companions of his murdered with his donkey, and he was nowhere to be found. His clothes were there, and stories came out that he ascended from his followers, and they made up the story. And this was one of the worst times of the Egyptians, of the Copts in Egypt. Thank you, and we will continue next time.